This is a conversation about healing, truth, and what becomes possible when we actually listen to the body. Inna Segal is a global pioneer in energy medicine and human consciousness, and the best-selling author of The Secret Language of Your Body, read by over 1 million people worldwide. After years of illness and the stillbirth of her child, Inna experienced a profound personal healing that changed the course of her life. For over 25 years since, she's helped people around the world uncover the root causes of pain and restore health through the intelligence of the body and soul. This isn't surface level wellness. It's about listening deeply and letting the body lead the way back to wholeness. Inna, welcome. I am always excited to speak about the emotional side of illness, so thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen.
So if we want to jump straight in, I thought a great place to start would be the fact that you say that your body never lies. The thing is, most people don't know how to listen to it. So since most of my audience are women in midlife, what do you think that they're most misreading about their symptoms right now?
Such a great question. I love that. I feel like we don't know how to listen because we don't understand some of the basics. So, because we live in this band-aid type society, what people hear most of the time is things like, oh, if you don't feel well or you don't feel good or you feel uncomfortable, then basically suppress or run away, as opposed to if you don't feel good, delve into it, figure it out. It's not a signal to run and it's not a signal to push things down. It's quite the opposite.
Agreed.
So I think that, that's usually step one. And I think, we don't know how to discern things because most of us have had everything from developmental challenges. And when I say that, I mean, from the womb to the first 7 years of life to the next 7 years to the next 7 years, right? There's been parts of you that developed correctly and in a healthy way, and there's parts that got stunted. And what I find, especially if we're talking about kind of getting into perimenopause and menopause time, everything that we have suppressed prior to this explodes during that time period. So once you kind of hit 40, you cannot suppress things the way you used to. You can't push them away. Some people earlier. And so the issues that we don't know ourselves, and as women, we're not encouraged to know ourselves. We're encouraged to be doing machines that cook, clean, and do everything else for our family, as opposed to taking time out to self-reflect. It's like we have to be guilty or shamed about the fact that we actually need time to know our story, to get to work with the story within us so that we can strengthen, transform, and lead essentially in our lives. But you cannot understand your body until you understand your life.
Ooh, I agree. It's big. And so the thing is to get women to listen without shaming themselves. Do you think? Because so often they think, how can I just not handle this the way I should be able to? And then the body starts breaking down. How can I just not do that?
Yeah. And I feel like I've been saying this probably at least for 25 years. We have to befriend our body and our emotions and actually start to understand what is the story that they're telling us. And I have spent so much time trying to create healthy foundations for people in general, but definitely women, in terms of how do I understand the layers of my emotions. And if I can start with the basics, Jen, just to explain this.
Yeah, go for it.
So what people do is they go, okay, let's say I have a feeling and the feeling's uncomfortable. Let's say it's rejection. No one likes it. And I feel this rejection and I might And if I said to somebody, okay, where do you feel this? And they might say, well, at the pit of my stomach, or I feel it in my shoulders, or I feel it in my heart. Those three areas that I just randomly picked represent a different type of rejection. And because we generalize emotion, we actually confuse things, and we start to go, oh, okay, I feel this. Well, firstly, I don't even know what I feel. So if I don't like what I feel, I'm going to numb it. But if I, let's say I do recognize it, I'm going to see it as something that's being done to me now, as opposed to maybe this is a culmination of things that have been done over, or that I've experienced over many, many years. And the reason I'm confused about the emotion that I'm feeling is because there are several emotions there, and they all have a different storyline. So again, if I say, okay, rejection at the pit of my stomach, there is a high likelihood that that started in your teenage years and has been there as a kind of as a guide of, because the body is a guide saying, oh, again, I'm getting into a relationship, or I'm working in a situation or a scenario where I'm being rejected, because that is your center. It's partly your center of intuition, and it's your sense of self. And because it's so strong, it attracts, like, this is what people kind of, get magnetized towards. And so that is completely different to if I say that I feel rejection, let's say, around my shoulders. Because if I'm talking about that, that will usually will be related to your neck as well. It'll relate to the fact that I'm carrying people on my shoulders, but also there are things that have been too hard for me, and potentially I have shut down because I didn't know how to deal with. And so there is a likelihood that I've also rejected those people. And there's a lot of tension and conflict around these particular relationships that I need to look at and work with and identify. And so every part of the body is going to give you a very different storyline around what this emotion is about. And because we're not taught this, we generalize and get confused and kind of stumble because of that.
And look for band-aids, and band-aids fall off.
Yeah.
We live in a world of band-aids. Yeah.
I'm that person who's against band-aids.
Oh, same. I grew up living on band-aids. And when I started to study to be a naturopath in my 20s, it was like, oh, band-aids don't work. We have to look at what's happening behind things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So pain often shows up kind of a long way away from the original source. It'll manifest somewhere different. So can you explain why the body displaces symptoms and what it's maybe trying to protect us from?
And I have to adjust this now to a degree, because this is when we go through a natural process of, from illness towards health, so to speak, or towards understanding why we have chronic conditions. And then since COVID, there's been a little bit of a different scenario that's happened, because the minute you put poison inside your body, the natural process that we're about to talk about isn't, it gets kind of stopped. And rather than going through essentially subtle bodies until it gets into the physical, it goes directly into the physical, attacks the physical because it's being poisoned, and explodes it. And so now we do not have the same storyline as when we get sick naturally without having, too much poison essentially inside our bodies, which takes years, as opposed to what we're seeing now, which could be, cancers exploding within months, sometimes less, And so again, just had to clarify that.
That's cool.
Because it's changed, and I
Yeah,
had,
it's changed the game. It's
yeah,
changed the game. Yeah,
it's
agree.
changed a lot. So in general, from my experience, what happens, okay, let me give you an example.
Please do.
So I know somebody, and we've actually known each other for a while, and she's had tumors in her spine. And I wanted to get to the bottom of why is this happening, and also the tumor, sorry, is benign, and I was curious. So I wanted to unpack this. I wanted to understand this. And I think she's about 62 at the moment. Um, I have a process where when I work with people, I want to understand where and why things are stored. And so I work with, I think I mentioned the subtle bodies. So I work with the astral body, which tells me about emotions and where they're stored and how and what's going on, both through colors in the auric field, as well as through just seeing and feeling those, what's going on.
Mm.
I also am working with the mental aspect of the astral and the etheric bodies, and also with the etheric body from the perspective of memory, ancestry, and the fact that the etheric body is a copy of the physical body. And because when people talk about cellular memory, which I have, for years as well, what they don't realize, and what I didn't when I started, is that the memory that we actually have is not so much cellular as it is etheric. It is the etheric body sending messages into the physical body, into the cell, so to speak, and adjusting it. Otherwise, if it was not that case, then when somebody had their arm or leg cut off, they would not feel anything. But we have so many people saying, well, I still feel pain, or I still feel this or that sensation. And that's only because the astral and etheric bodies are still there, even though the physical part of that body, of that part, is not. So with this particular person, we went through different timelines, and because I've worked with the etheric body for so long, I go directly to be shown, essentially through energetic processes, exactly the timelines and where things occurred. And so what was really, really interesting with this particular lady was that the actual possibility, the seeds, let's just say, of her health condition started when she was 6, but they didn't sprout until she was 28. And the first thing that occurred when we were going through this whole timeline experience was that she felt, at around the age of 6, she felt a little bit different to others. And because she felt a little bit different, there was an immediate sense of, oh, I don't understand this, push it back. Because when we don't understand something, we push it into the background of ourselves, which then often ends up in the spine, later in life.
Got it.
Right. And
yeah.
So then, we went from the 6-year-old to the 12-year-old, where she had an experience of being rejected and shamed, and kind of going, oh, you're not good enough for me, from a boy that she had, kind of a childlike, I guess, first love, first relationship with. And from there, we went to the age of 21, when she realized, well, actually, I think I prefer women.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, she connected with people who are very religious. And so there was a different type of shaming, but she was keeping it all hidden. What was really interesting around the age of 28, and it was between, I look at 7-year cycles to try and understand what's really happened in that particular experience, especially when something is, chronic.
Yeah.
So when she was 28, the reason that I saw that the seeds started to sprout, so the issues started to come to the surface, was because she ended up in her first relationship with a woman, but hid it from everyone else. So we went from thinking, feeling, state into action. So my whole being is now doing this, but I'm still hiding. I'm playing this game. Now, what's really interesting when you start to look at timelines is that around the age of 28, it is the time where your throat chakra, your ability to speak and express yourself, begins to develop, right? Where you start to go, well, how am I going to use my voice? How am I going to express myself? Do I have to hide and push everything down, or am I going to stand in what I believe? And she just couldn't. Now, what was really fascinating about the next two ages that I saw was that her mother died. So I think I saw something like 35 or something like that, or 34. And her mother died just around that time. And there was a part of her that went, oh my God, I don't have to hide it as much now. And then at 46 was when she discovered the tumor. The year before her, when she was starting to have issues with her fingers and not being able to use her fingers, like before, she and her nervous system starting to really show up, that something is wrong. Her father died, and this is the reason that the tumor didn't become cancerous, because it was like, and I kept seeing this image as we were working on all these timelines, especially at that stage, like she was throwing up. And I work a lot with archetypes, which we can talk about. And so the feminine part of her that had gone through this whole journey of suppression, at that point was like she could not hold it down. And again, we spoke about that timeline 40, into your 40s, where you cannot push it down anymore. And even though she was able to look at things, and she started doing her healing work, it hasn't dissolved the tumor because it wasn't deep enough, the work that she was doing, but it stopped it from turning into becoming a cancerous tumor, so to speak. So it was really fascinating to see the journey, and that where it started essentially was the reproductive system. And where, so it started with her going, oh, I'm different, what's wrong with me, type of thing, still pushing it down. And then it went into at 28, when it really kind of, when she started to live that experience, when she chose to be with someone but still lie, again, it went up into the throat, because that's where at that time the part that was developing. And then by pushing it away, that's where the tumor eventually settled.
And so with that kind of information, people have got more choice to how they work with healing, and the whole accepting responsibility part of it without blame.
Yeah.
Do you see that as an essential part? I'm curious.
Well, absolutely. I think that healing and blame don't work together in general.
They don't. No, but the Western world throws it on us.
Well, exactly, because
because sick.
Right? Because women are naturally easily manipulated if they feel guilty.
Yeah.
Right? So if you guilt trip a woman, unless she's really internally strong and self-reflects a lot, she will end up doing something that you want her to do because she wants to please, right? She wants to be good. We have the good girl, syndrome, so to speak, as opposed to, I think, what you're saying, which is, and what is the thing that I've said a million times, which is you need to take responsibility from the perspective of time, giving yourself time, and seeing the body and the soul as your guide as opposed to your enemy. And also being smart. I think that what we do, and I can give you my own example of something that happened last year where, I have a practice, right? I scan my body every, morning. I get a sense about what's going on. And when things start to show up, let's say I'm traveling or something's going on and I don't have a lot of time, I know that I have, like within a few days of that happening or a week, I really need some time to transform it because I have zero interest in getting diseases. I've been there and done that. And so I was actually with my partner in England, and his father was dying and going through radiation, which was very painful to handle for me because I do not agree with that way of treating unless you want to die soon, from my experience. And I started getting jaw pain because I was holding it back so much.
You weren't saying your piece. Yeah.
Right. And
Yes.
so when one day when my partner left and with his mom and I think his dad was doing something, he was with me, but he was upstairs taking, resting essentially. I went, okay, this is the time that I need to do some work on myself. But and I'm using this example because this is what women do a lot. We don't self-protect, right? And so we kind of, as I was thinking about the house where we were, that we were in, I was thinking, oh my God, this room, this sunroom is the best room for me to do my work, right? To journal and to connect. And, it's the sunniest and I'm used to sunny weather. And so without really thinking ahead, I went and I sat in that room and I started to get into this clearing and where it was coming from. And I connected to this vulnerable inner child inside of me that I had not seen before because it hadn't come up in that kind of way. And in the middle of doing this process, my partner and his mother came back. And I remember sitting there and literally almost freezing because I went, oh my God, I'm in the middle of this process. I can't talk to them about whatever else because I'm going to get out of the process. And I've just spent an hour getting into this process. And so now I'm going to hurt myself. And the other part is that they're going to expect me to help with all the things that they bought. And this is going to look really bad. So I need to make a decision and I need to decide which way I'm going to go. And because in the past, my natural thing would be to put myself last, like all women pretty much, I sat there and I went, I'm not going to do that, but there's going to be consequences because I wasn't, I didn't think it through. And there was arguments eventually. And during the argument with my partner, who said, like that was inappropriate, blah, 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 and I'm trying, and with me trying to explain my side of the story, he said, in the future, again, I don't mind if you do that, but you cannot do that where people can see you, right? And it was such a huge key to me because I was like, oh my God, had I been in a room where that was private, then, I wouldn't have had this situation happen. And I could have also just, very briefly said, look, I'll be there out in a moment. I'm in the middle of something, but I'm in a private space. But because, again, most people in your life will go, you're doing what? You're doing work on yourself. You're doing healing work. That's a waste of time. You need to go and do practical things and help. Right. And so this is how we get manipulated, and we start to feel guilt and we start to feel shame, as opposed to what responsibility actually means is keep yourself safe. So, think about the time, think about who might come into your space, how much time you need, how deep you potentially might want to go, and essentially, protect it and create that scenario where you're not in a situation like I was, and because you do hurt yourself when when you get into that type of a situation, and and you undo all the good work. So the idea is responsibility actually means I connect to myself. I'm kind, I'm gentle, I take my time, I don't rush things, because anything you rush, it ends up being, a band-aid. I allow myself to go deep into my exploration, but at the same time, I'm not blaming myself for anything that happened. Blame doesn't even come into this. But what I'm doing is I'm working with different aspects of myself that became hurt and stunted. So they stopped growing with my wise self, with the wise woman self. And I need to connect with these parts and bring them on the journey along with me so that I can be all of me.
Yeah. And not, yeah, it is the accepting responsibility for the choice and kind of consequence. So doing your scanning, your process in a different space, having to consider, or getting to consider all that kind of stuff as well, all leads to the end result.
Yeah.
A better end result. So when I'm working with women, this kind of age, the peri and postmenopause, midlife women, they're told it's just aging, it's just hormones, it's just stress, it's just something. When do you think that story can become dangerous?
From the minute they're told that, because
They take it on, don't they?
yeah, because it's the story is that this is a time that you need to create balance and slow down, and you need to start to understand the 7 year cycles, right? And you need to understand that whatever you're feeling, and I teach people about themes, so I'm constantly talking about themes, right? So it's like, what is the theme that keeps coming up for you over and over again? Is the theme in terms of your health? Like, where is it in the body, right? So if somebody says, for instance, okay, I'm exhausted, right? We hear that all the time. Okay, let's look at your storyline in the 7 year increments. When did you lose all your energy and vitality? At what point did you burn out? And what were the decisions that led to this so that you are in the space that you are? And how do we start to reclaim so that you, from this point, you use that exhaustion as opposed to letting it destroy you, right? So how do you need to listen to your body and live in a completely different way? Because what really inspired me, I'm going to say, is that when I was in my kind of early 30s, I ended up meeting this lady who took me on the journey towards understanding the work of Rudolf Steiner, and I'm a big fan of his work.
Yeah.
And the depth of it, everything from how he looked at medicine to homeopathy to spirituality and understanding the body in general, and life. And so one of the things that I saw in her, she was at the time probably in her early 70s, and she had more energy than people who were 20. Yeah. And she would teach something called eurythmy, which is this beautiful practice to do with movement and connection and listening to your body. And and healing it. And she would jump around the room, with so much energy and vitality that I was like, you know what? Everything we've been told is a lie, because here's a great example. And I've seen this over and over again with different people who, not just people who practice real science, type of work, but who really understand this and who don't burn themselves out because they're willing to love and respect themselves in a different way, and they have practices. They're very, very strong, powerful practices that come first in their life before everything else. And that's what she told me. She had a practice where, her nervous system would be regenerated through an exercise to do with concentration. Now, I have to say, I hated that exercise when I started.
At the time, sure.
Right? Because I was like, this is so boring. I want it to be interesting. But with time, I went, oh my God, when I spend 5 to 10 minutes allowing myself to concentrate, let's say, on an object in the morning, and then, when I complete the exercise and I use that energy that has been harnessed through it, and I move it through my nervous system and through my my head, my spine, I can actually achieve so much more during the day. I can handle setbacks more. I can respond instead of reacting more. And so, what I've seen is that you can make excuses at any point, at any age, about how hard things are and so on. Or you can go, you know what? My body's screaming that this is my time. And, how long have I had stress for? What is that stress? What stresses me? And how do I handle stress? And if I can again just give a quick example with that. So I had this conversation with my daughter. My daughter's 22 and probably one of the most balanced females that I've ever encountered. And she was saying to me, Mum, in our kind of like ancestral feminine line, everybody stresses and worries and have had digestive issues, as one of the things, including you, Mum. And she said to me, I am curious when, what are the things that stress you the most? And I said to her, well, in particular, when something's going on for you or your brother, but more him than you, because, I know you know how to deal with stuff. And he's learning it.
Boys are different, yeah.
Right. And she said, so let's say your mom, her grandma, she's like, she just worries nonstop and, like panics, literally panics. And she said, your grandmother was like that too. What do you do that's different, Mom? I want to know, I want to learn from you. What do you do?
What a great question. Yeah.
Because her thing, my daughter's thing is that she wants to learn from other people's experiences as opposed to from her own, in the sense of, she's like, this doesn't work. Why do I need to copy you and do what doesn't work, as opposed to tell me what does work through your experience?
Yeah.
So I said to her, well, what I do as soon as I feel that tension in my stomach, I recognize it. So I take that time, I place my hands on that part of my body, I breathe into it, I recognize I ask the questions. What is it about? Okay, this is about my fear to do with my son, and let's say some of his health issues, and him not listening to anything I say. So,
Fun being a mum. I've got a boy as well. Yeah.
So I say to her, so what I do is I go, what can I do to help him? is there something that I can research in my own time to understand what he's going through so that I can become more compassionate? And in that sense of compassion, I can guide him when he's open to listening to this. Can I, can, are there any processes that are healing or spiritual that I know that could help him? And if so, can I do them? With the awareness that we've had conversations about, me asking him for permission to help him when I have something that I can do. Can I work on myself and release that tension, and then maybe hold the picture and hold that space for him to become more open towards it? And I said to her, at all times it's different, depends on where I'm at, where he's at, what he's doing, how he's doing it. But I don't suppress it. I don't push it away. I don't ignore it. I, take that time. And so rather than creating a digestive issue, I actually transform and assimilate the experience. And then I might journal about it. I might talk to somebody about it who can give me better advice. But essentially, I take action on it. And when you do, it doesn't fester. When people are looking at tumors, cancers, all of those very unpleasant experiences, this is a festering, right? This is you ignoring what your body's showing you for years and years, usually, unless, like I said, you've taken some poison. But even if you did, the people who, from my experience, the people who became very sick after COVID, were the ones who already had a lot of underlying conditions that exploded, right? And at the same time, I want to say to people, and I know you are a naturopath, we want to support the body through our diet and the water we have, right? So having a great source of water, having a great, taking some time to understand diet and what works for you, right? Because again, there's a million people telling you a million different things. I have a friend who is vegan and essentially only eats raw food, and she says she feels the best like that. I don't believe that I would feel the best on that diet because I've tried all sorts of diets in the past and I know the results of them. So again, it's that internal listening and finding your own way, and then having, most of us, because of the toxins in the world, need some type of a herbal support as well. So really looking after yourself from all angles is the way I think we should go.
Yeah, I agree. We've got to look at things physically and emotionally. And I was going to say, or ask, like, I meet people who I'm Jen, but I'm doing this and this and this, and they're doing all the physical stuff, cleanest, like, the raw, vegan, organic, paleo, keto, whole foods, whoop-de-doopy diet. However, their body is not going well.
Yeah.
And it's
that's
because practitioners like you and I know it's the emotion that's sitting behind it. However, what I also know is that not everyone's ready to hear that. How do you deal with that? It's big.
well, I have this, I think that before I started and before I wrote my book, The Secret Language of Your Body, I had actually started as a degree, finished as a diploma of professional writing and editing and research. And so during those years, both going to uni and TAFE, and I'm going to say I ended up in TAFE because the teachers were way better. And I was like, I want the best education. I don't care where I get it, as long as I get it. And, through doing that, I ended up, I spent quite a few years doing journalism and interviewing people and getting a sense of how different people are and how in a communication we need to approach people from where they're at. And so usually what I do is when I'm talking to somebody, I'll put myself into the place of wherever they're at on their journey as soon as I find out. And so I might go, look, I really, I really think you should start with acupuncture. Are you open to acupuncture? Or I'll say to somebody, I feel like your nervous system is not ready to go into a deep level exploration. It shuts down. You've had so much nervous system dysregulation from childhood that until you work on the nervous system, we can't go into these deeper explorations. And I want you to be safe. I want you to feel connected and supported. So I suggest that you go and, let's say, have some sessions with a cranial sacral therapist, or somebody who works with the body and emotions physically, and then let's
Gently,
come back,
gently.
yeah, and work on your emotions in that way.
Yeah, it's a big one. I tell myself often, as a pracky, that it's my journey to let them do their journey, and we can only, guide them where it is. But ultimately, if we want long-term change in our health, we've got to look at what's sitting behind the physical. Otherwise, we're just doing band-aids. I love you do this work. So we see this time of life triggering a lot of old buried stuff. Why do you think the body uses this time of life, this season, to speak so loudly?
Well, because like people, I think you mentioned earlier, people talk about the hormonal system, and I see it a little bit differently because I'm looking at it from the subtle body's perspective. And so I see it as when we are going through that teenage time and everyone talks and screams about hormones. This is usually the time where our astral body, which is the body of emotions and desires and personality, this is where your personality comes out, starts to awaken, within us and develop. And then, during that stage of teenage years, we're also told, you need to be like everyone else, push that down. No, you can't express that. You can't show this. This is not okay. And so we're taught all these different types of things. And our ability to kind of hold and push that down is really strong because our etheric body is full of vitality, right? It has so much, like, because it's the body of energy, the body of chi. But once we get into the 40s and the 50s, that etheric body has been weakened for most people. We have a lot less vitality. We have a lot less of a capacity to push things down or to hold them at bay. Our everything that we haven't dealt with emotionally now starts to explode in that astral body because
Right.
it's not being held. And it's also the time, I don't know if you agree with me, where we start to make new choices, where we start to go, now let me look at all these themes. Let me look at myself as a wife, let's say, and is this relationship working for me? And we either continue to be in the relationship, but we start to, kind of push a partner to change, or we decide, what, I can never find anyone better, so we twist ourselves even more and become more sick, or we, and kind of small, or we go, what, no, I want to know myself in a different way, so I'm going to find someone different. Or we start to go, I need to learn some stuff. I want to, my emotions and my hormones are out of control. I'm crying, at a movie where I never cried, or somebody says something to me and I'm, kind of falling apart. There's something there that needs to be really looked at. And who can I find, rather than just blaming it all on everything medical? Oh, it's the stage of life. It's like, well, actually, this is the stage of life where things are not suppressed as much. So I have access. And if women understood this, that they have access to what has been pushed down and suppressed, and they don't have the capacity to suppress it anymore, then they would potentially be a lot more positive and excited about it. And rather than just going, okay, I went to a holistic doctor and they told me that if I just walk, as long as I walk, my hormones will be balanced. As long as I eat meat and walk, I'll be fine. But how come I'm not fine? Because it's like, well, yeah, that's step one. But what about all the other things that, like you were saying, Jen, that you have suppressed, you've pushed down? They're beings inside of you. They're actually beings,
Yeah.
which is how I see archetypes, that are saying, when is it going to be my turn? When are you going to pay attention to me? When are you going to understand me and work with me from a perspective of letting me become a stronger, wiser, more open-hearted, open-minded woman?
Mm. I think estrogen, from my world, on the physical side, estrogen allows so much of that to be suppressed. And as that natural, which is meant to happen, dip of estrogen happens, our bullshit meter goes off and all those things that you just said. And then women go to the doctor and they go, well, here, have some HRT. Let's give you estrogen and let's just stuff it all right down again, which opens up another huge can of worms for different, cancers and things that have shown themselves to present when we keep suppressing emotions versus, like you said, this is a time to celebrate and let it all.
Yeah, and if I can add to it,
Yeah, please
I have
do.
heard doctors say things like, oh, you need to check your hormone levels when you're in your 30s, so that when they deep, you can get whatever hormonal medication is to bring them to the same place. And it's like, it's, and there's so much of this in medicine. There is no understanding of cycles of life.
We're meant to have no or bugger all estrogen at this age. It's
And
crazy that they just top it up.
exactly. And we're meant to reflect.
Yeah.
We're meant to make new choices. We're meant to have new boundaries with people. We're not meant to just shut our mouths and be quiet
Yeah.
during this time. We're actually meant to be loud and, not loud from the perspective of unconsciousness and just,
No.
but loud from the perspective of, what does it mean for me now that I'm in this point in my life? What is meaningful to me? And this is my other conversation with my daughter constantly, where she says to me, Mom, are you happy? Are you happy? And I say to her, that word is a challenging one for me, because sometimes I definitely, often I am, but I almost feel like it lacks depth because of the culture that we live in. And I say to her, I want you to ask me a different question. And the question I want you to ask is, are you fulfilled?
Mhm.
Are you on purpose? Do you feel like whatever is going on in your life, that you are working with it successfully? And if not, what are the areas in your life that maybe you're ignoring that you need to put your attention on? And so it's been this really powerful exploration of depth. I think from your 40s, you need to,
We
it's
want
almost like,
depth. Yeah.
right. up until then, you might have lots of colors, right, in yourself, in your soul. But as you get into your 40s, 50s, 60s, and so on, you want the colors to become richer as
Mm.
opposed to, wanting them to become weaker. And what, again, our society teaches is, oh my God, you're getting older. How about you put something in your face, right? How about you? And it's like, we can still look after our, ourselves, our skin, whatever it is, through, you know, healthy
Naturally.
creams and
Yeah.
whatever, and enjoy that part of it. But this push into, oh my God, you might, as soon as you get into your 40s, you need to start focusing again in that medical field on injecting yourself with everything, as opposed to, and I'm all for, if there's kind of like vitamins and minerals that you can inject at
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
you
Vitamin
know,
infusions are great. Agree.
right? But essentially, it's like a focus has become on, I'm losing who I was in my 20s or 30s, as opposed to, what is it like to be enriched and be this wise, powerful, passionate
Yeah.
person in my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, right? What is the part of my soul evolution and life that I have now that I need to work on kind of embracing and enriching? And again, this is what I teach when I'm teaching some of my in-depth courses, so that people can go, oh my God, this is the time that I'm in. And it's not the time to be trying to be 20. It's like,
Mm.
when you were 20, and this has been my advice to my daughter, I'm like, live it up, like live your 20s fully. And my son, do the things you want to do, be creative. You don't need to have as many responsibilities, wait. um, but as you get into, the next 7-year cycle and the next 7-year cycle, learn about it, align with it, instead of always trying to run back to something that's not you anymore.
Agreed. So much I agree. I'm curious, your 7-year cycles you're talking about. I'm big on Saturn return, the 7 years and the Saturn return cycles. Are you similar thinking, or is it a different theory around 7-year cycles?
I think it's a combined theory.
Okay.
I look at it from, I guess, from the work of Rudolf Steiner, because I've studied it so much, and
Yeah.
from, the cycles, the fact that from 0 to 21, we're kind of creating that foundation. And then whatever we haven't worked on starts to come back as we're, entering into a new cycle. And so we might start feeling, I think a couple of years ago, I remember I started feeling this anxiety, which I hadn't felt, for years. And I was like, what am
What's
I
that
anxious
about?
about? What is this about? And it was really interesting, because once I calculated the 7-year cycles, it actually connected me back to when I was 3. And what I saw was myself merging with my mom, because my mom at that time, kind of through all my childhood, it was there was a confusion between who was the mom and who wasn't. And so in my merging, there was this sense of, I failed to help her. And so again, as a 3-year-old, I already made a decision that I had to help everyone. And
Uh,
I was like, so a few years ago, I was like, this is actually exhausting. I don't have to do this, but where is this coming from? And it was so clear that, I was at 3, and there was several others that were having the same theme in terms of timelines. And so I see it as, we had an experience that we had no idea how to work with or complete. And now it's coming up because you're stronger, wiser, more capable. And now you can work with it and complete it.
Makes sense. So, for women listening, if they could take one simple and powerful step this week to begin restoring the trust in their body, um, and start being open to the concept of emotions impacting the physical health, what would be kind of, and the right's not going to be the word, but what would be a great place to start versus not just the popular band-aids they're used to doing? Where would you have someone start? So that women have got something practical they can take away from this.
I would get someone to start with, firstly, making some time. So maybe 15, 20 minutes. That's just your time. And then breathing slowly. So really slowing down your breath and allowing yourself to go deeper into your body. I will often say, breathe through your nose and out through your mouth with slightly pursed lips for at least, a minute. And then start to become aware of where do you have tension inside the body. And maybe it's 10 different places, but start with one. If you don't know, start with your heart and your chest. And place your hands on that part of your body. And again, bring the breath towards that part. And then start exploring, what is the sensation that I'm feeling, right? And for quite a few women, it's going to be numbness. And they'll interpret it by saying, I feel nothing. And what I say to women is, feeling nothing is a feeling, and it's a huge feeling. What the feeling tells you is that there's a secret behind this. And you might go, if I could peel the layer of numbness off, and this is where being creative comes in, and you might go, if numbness had a color, what color would it be? And if numbness had a shape, what shape would it be? Can I peel that off? And I'll usually, in most of my processes, whether it's in my books or when I'm teaching, I'll talk about this purple fire of transformation, because we've all seen fire, and we know that when we put things into it, it burns and dissolves it. So I would go, am I willing to give myself permission to start with releasing, let's say, this stuckness or this numbness, and can I peel it off and place it into this imaginary purple fire? And purple is the color of transformation. And then as you go through layer one, you'll usually feel lighter. And so then your role is to go into layer two. And the layer two is, what am I feeling? And what is it about? Maybe right now. And so then you might start to become conscious of it. At this point, I really encourage you to journal it, right? Have a journal next to yourself, because when you write things down, you start to become clearer. You start to see what's really going on, and you don't know until you either talk it out, move it out, or write it out. So, from there, you might go, wow, there's a feeling that I'm feeling, and maybe it's not comfortable, and I don't want to feel it. And especially if you don't want to feel it, what I encourage you to do is to find a song. You need to find a song or two or three that speaks to exactly what you're feeling. And then whether you, again, give yourself some time on another day, and you allow yourself to listen to the song while you're breathing and really feeling through the song, and you allow some memories to come up for you. And maybe those memories are around how you have allowed yourself to be treated, because essentially how others treat you is how we allow others to treat us. And you might want to just, I guess, feel through that experience. Now, as you start to do this, you'll start to reconnect with yourself. And one of the tools that I have is a card deck that I created called Heart Healing Cards. And it's not like a card deck where you're doing a reading essentially for the future. It is a card deck that talks about all the layers of your heart and your feelings and how you may have rejected, pushed away, ignored so many aspects of your own intuition and your heart and your own feelings, and how you can reclaim them. And so I actually encourage people, if they can, to get the card deck, and every day after you've done what I've, mentioned by connecting, pick a card, sit with that card. Every card is essentially kind of like a love letter back to yourself so that you can reclaim yourself and your heart. Read that, read the process, write a letter back to your own heart, and do whatever the process says, and start to reclaim your innate capacity to feel, as opposed to fighting your feelings, which then will create hormonal craziness that happens. It happens because you don't like your feelings, because you've been told that you're too much, you're too this, that somebody else can't handle it. But the truth is, you can work with feelings and refine them so that they work with you, instead of so that they explode, inside of you.
Yeah. And so doing a daily practice helps us to come from a place of prevention to be not letting things boil up as much, maybe. Yeah.
Well, prevention and actually creating better health, right? So, we want to prevent, but we also want to thrive, I think.
Yeah.
And so we want to create pathways that are new for us. And I think I've heard you say this in a previous podcast that you've done, where, when we're in our earlier times, we can be very scared of certain things, or we're, we've been told by so many people, suppress, don't, and people that maybe we respect, maybe who are older than us. But as we enter into the stage of a wise woman, then we are the ones who are writing our own script in a different way. And so everything that's going on for us becomes an opportunity to reclaim, but also to go, how I don't have as much life as I had when I was 20, maybe. So now at 20, I could do all sorts of things and take all sorts of risks, and, maybe even do things that I wouldn't do, later. But now I need to be more conscious, more intentional, more specified, because now I'm at a time of valuing my life. So everything becomes more intentional.
Love it. Time has raced away, raced away. I am curious. I'm curious. If, with the wisdom that you've got today, if you could go back and whisper in your ear as an 18-year-old, younger than what your daughter is now, what piece of wisdom would you give her?
I know exactly the wisdom. I would have said, slow down, which is what my mom was saying. You don't need to rush. You don't need to, by rushing through things and trying so hard to prove things to others, to become successful so early, you're missing out on really, really important stages of development. So, in my mind, when I was 18, 25 was old. And I was like, I have to succeed by the time I'm 25, or it's not going to happen. I have to be super successful by the time I'm 30. And I've seen my son do that and not my daughter. And, the conversations I've had with my daughter so many times have been like, she'd say to me, Mom, why are you not pushing me? I need you to push me to do stuff. And I said to her, this is maybe when she was 19. And I said to her, because I understand you and I know who you are, and you don't have the personality to be pushed, one. Two, it would be unhealthy for you. And three, you're in a time of your life to enjoy and have fun and discover who you are. You're not at a stage in your life to build a business, and to become super successful. You have plenty of time for that. But and I say this to both of my children, if you miss the stage of, building your self-esteem, getting to know who you are, building your confidence and courage at this point, then when you're 30, 40, you're going to have to redo all this. And I think you should do it at the time that you have, but also, really enjoy this time, kind of learn to value it and not judge it based on how much money you have, how successful your business is, and this constant running and stressing yourself out. Actually enjoy. That's what I would have told myself.
I love it. Love it, love it. It has been such a pleasure to talk with you, Inna. It is such a big topic and hard to put into, just a podcast. So we might get you back in the future. For me, it's vital. As a naturopath of decades, we have to look at the emotions, not just the physical. And I love that it's totally where you come from. So I'll put all the links below to your cards and to all your everything so that people can follow you. Doesn't matter where you're listening to this, all the links will be below in the show notes, so go check it out. But Inna, where's your favorite place for people to follow you or reach out to you?
I want people to go to my website, which
Okay.
is innasegal.com. And I want people at the moment, Jen, we're doing this thing where I'm on this kind of pathway where I want to give people an opportunity to learn from me and to start the learning without having any excuses, including payments, but the only thing they need is time. And over the last couple of years, I've recorded mini workshops. We call them masterclasses, but that's what they are. They're mini workshops where I go through things like, the wisdom of all the different parts of your body or the systems of your body and the emotions and, actions connected to it. I also go through what we didn't have much time to explore. What does it mean in terms of like to have an archetype? What is it? How is it connected to different chakras in yourself? How does that create a map for you to understand you and your life? The 7-year time periods, the different stages of healing, and so much more. So
Cool.
I encourage people to
People
go
can
there
dive in. Yeah.
dive in, because eventually, and that could be, a few months or a year, we will take all the free type of courses off, and you'll have to invest into it. But right now, this is your chance to take a step towards yourself.
I love that. Inna Segal, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You've been incredibly generous with your wisdom and your time. Thank you.